All right, everybody, here we go. Welcome to episode number 71 of Sports Cards Live. Today is December the 26th, 2020. I'm Jeremy Lee, and what a year it's been so far. Before we get into tonight, we do have Dr. Beckett. He is waiting in the back room. I'm going to bring him out in a couple of seconds here. Before we do, I just want to really thank Scott Greenberg, CEO of Starstock, for joining me last Saturday. Great show with Scott. Learned a lot about Starstock. Check that out. I also want to thank the after hours guest I had last Saturday, Andy Kaysen. He's the host of the Fantasy Football Card Quest YouTube channel. And we kind of picked up where we left off on Starstock, sorry. And he taught us a lot about that. He's a football expert. I really enjoyed that discussion. Next Saturday, joining me will be Josh Johnson from Card Ladder and from Cardboard Chronicles. That's going to be a great episode as well. And then tonight, so we're going to go for about an hour with Dr. Beckett tonight, and then at an hour and a half later, so at 11:30 Eastern, joining me will be Charles Hinde, and we are going to go over some data sales that he's been tracking before and after the record-breaking Wayne Gretzky PSA 10 sales. So that should be interesting as well. Check that out later on. And by the way, he's 14 years old, and he knows his stuff. So I'm excited to have Charles on later tonight. I want to welcome all new viewers. If you're new to the channel, welcome to Sports Cards Live. We're closing in on 1,800 subscribers now. If you have not yet subscribed, please go ahead and do that. I'd greatly appreciate it. I want to shout out the Hobby Hotline show, where I guest hosted this morning. Check that out. It's a live show every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern. I'm a guest host. Dr. Beckett is a guest host. Brian Gray is a guest host. This morning I was a guest host, and we had Drew Herndon, we had John Newman, and we had Brad Bethune. The four of us were on there. We had a great time. James Hummel called in. Good time. Check that out. That should be in the archives on the Hobby Hotline YouTube channel. I also want to make sure you guys all are following on Instagram the Big Three Sports Cards at the Big Three Hockey. These guys showcase some of the finest singles in the hobby. Check them out. Give them a follow on Instagram. They're a supporter of this show, and I greatly appreciate them. And I greatly appreciate if you follow them as well. I want to shout out all the podcast listeners. This show is uploaded on podcast pretty much the day or two after the episode is live. So please do check out the podcast. And if you are a listener, I appreciate you as well. And I hope you enjoy listening. As always, tonight, your comments and your questions are in play. We have several comments already. I can see them coming in. Thank you, everybody. So do not be shy. Let's bring out tonight's guest. He really needs no interest. His name is attached to the hobby. It always will be. Dr. Jim Beckett, welcome to Sports Cards Live again. How are you doing tonight?
Thank you, Jeremy. Delight to be here.
It's great to have you. This is the second time. You were on my episode number 30. It was a special episode for me. I wanted you to be on number 30. And, this is episode number 71 tonight. So it's been a while, but it's great to have you back. And I think we're looking forward to kind of going over 2020. We've got you for about an hour. So I think we should really just jump right in. Before we do, Jim, I'm going to just welcome the guests we have with us so far. And then, and I'll let everybody know, before we came live, Jim and I, we went through the list of big events in 2020. So we're going to go through these things, address them. We just lost Dr. Beckett. Hopefully he'll be right back shortly. I'm sure he will be. So in the meantime, let's welcome Legion. Welcome, Legion. You'll notice there's a new effect here on StreamYard, where we actually, there he is. He's right back. Welcome back, Dr. Beckett.
Hit the wrong button.
Yeah, so you'll notice there's a new graphic feature here. We're going to try it out. Legion, howdy to you. Good evening, as always, to see you. Foul Fireball knows. Welcome, Foul Fireball. Eric Perry's been looking forward to this all day, as have I. Brad, who joined me on Hobby Hotline this morning, first time live watcher. Good to have you here, Brad. We'll be gentle with you, buddy. Michael Ham was active this morning on Hobby Hotline. Good morning, Michael. B. Roy's here. Awesome. Belated Christmas gift. How's that, Dr. B? That's very nice to hear. We got Jim's good friend, Rich Klein, and that's good. Good evening, Jim. Charles is here, and this is Charles, who will be joining me on After Hours later on. Terry Fortune, good evening to you. Al G, good evening to you. Rondell is here. Happy holidays to you as well. As well. Paul White, good evening. Ryan's in the house. Good evening, Ryan. Hockey is always good to see you. Tiger Jordan is here. Lee Haskins is here. 90s hockey, good to see you. Mike Truman, Glad you're able to join us as well. Brian Kingsley, as always. We got Brian Gray in the house. Glad to listen to one of my role models growing up in Dallas. I've been so blessed to know Dr. Beckett. I hope someday to be in the same class as the good doc. A guy can only hope. BG, it's great to have you join us tonight. Sandro, good evening to you. Dominic, good evening. We got Bobby Baseball, Joe Perot. We have Ziggy Palfy has finally made an appearance on the show. John Simone, ACL, Tim Marin. Welcome. Ziggy is here. Daniel is here. Texas is here. Wow, everybody's here. Vegas Finds is in the house. Absolute in the house. We got C. Eddie B. We got Footy Cards. We got anonymous Facebook user. If you are an anonymous Facebook user, guys, I'm going to put it right down at the bottom on the ticker. Go there and you will no longer be anonymous. We appreciate it. Bobby Baseball, first time watching live. Great to have you. David G, welcome. Dennis is here. Bobby Burrell is in the house. We got Texas Car Dude here as well. All right. Welcome, everybody. Glad to have you all. All right. Jim, what a year 2020 was. There's lots to discuss. I think we have to jump right in, but I'm going to ask you, what in your mind is the number one sort of headline, the number one event that happened in 2020 that you think really sticks out?
Well, it would have been Kobe, except that when COVID hit, it changed everything. So I'd have to say COVID. All the implications of the COVID, the brief slip and a period of uncertainty for a couple weeks, and then it just took off like a rocket. So a lot of the other things that you and I have talked about and that other people are contemplating basically, I think, came as a result of the COVID, which changed the way we consider sports and consider sports cards.
Certainly is. I mean, we had Kobe died January 26th. We saw a run up on his cards. And then we saw them settle down. And then we found out that The Last Dance was going to air early because of COVID, because of the cancellation of sports. We had The Last Dance and we saw a run up, and we haven't looked back ever since. That few weeks of uncertainty, as I recall, was sort of the very end of March, maybe last 2 weeks of March, first week of April. And since then, the hobby's just it's gone crazy. And all that considering we haven't been to a card. Okay, there's been a couple card shows here and there, but there was no national for the first time in 30 years. What do you think the impact of that's been?
Well, I'd like to, the national organizers would like to think it's a negative impact, but it hadn't had an impact on the hobby at large, but a lot of disappointment. I mean, this is a hobby where people really enjoy getting together. And even though social media and other ways to get together virtually, nothing beats getting together in person. And so that's a once a year opportunity for me to see people I rarely see, and I missed it. But the show went on, and prices marched upward. So it's been an amazing year.
Certainly has been. Along with the little bit of uncertainty at the end of March, beginning of April, we also at that exact time saw the beginning of the Topps Project 2020, which made a big splash. We saw card values sort of skyrocket very temporarily. They were very high for a short amount of time, and then they kind of came back down to earth. When at the outset of that, and when I first started picking up a few cards, I thought to myself, what a wonderful opportunity to bring in art lovers into the hobby, because these 20 artists, they each have pretty much at least 100,000 followers on their socials. And I thought, what a great way to expand the hobby. And I wonder if that happened. Did we gain new collectors through the fans of these artists, or did these artists simply gain more fans through sports cards? Any insights into that?
All the above, Jeremy. I mean, I think that when that came out, it was fresh, it was new. It did add new collectors. It energized some former collectors and current collectors. And as you're trying to do, I'm trying to do, all these different podcasts and content creators are trying to help people understand this industry. It's a little bit complicated. And Topps, the Project 2020, it started off kind of slow, and people thought, well, what is this? And then all of a sudden it took off, and then people jumped in with more than both feet, and then it cooled off again. And so they were on a roller coaster, but that's the new sports card hobby, where things move fast. And so they got an education this year that the Project 2020 was not completely, it didn't get more and more golden as it increased. There was a peak, and then it dropped off a little bit, and but still net, it was huge news and a big positive for Topps.
Yeah, no doubt. I think it created so much excitement for so much time. And I guess, again, my hope is that we did capture some new individuals into the hobby through the followings that these wicked artists did have. I mean, there's some really great artists, and they're young. These are young artists with plenty of reach.
I'm sure we did. And that really led into some of these other things that we can talk about, some of the celebrity interest and mainstream interest. I mean, that fed into that, because it wasn't about world record prices. It was about taking a very high end and classy way to take what most people thought was kind of the old fashioned baseball card and modernize it with these artists who were super creative. And I thought it was very impressive.
Yeah, no, so did I. And I know a lot of people did. We had a good chat about it this morning as well on Hobby Hotline. I don't know if you got a chance to tune in or listen to that, but we spent about half an hour on it this morning. And yeah, Project 2020, aptly named, something that we will definitely associate with the year 2020 as the years go by, among many other things. So you just mentioned the sort of celebrity involvement. Let's talk about that a little bit. Maybe we should start by talking about Starstock. It's a new platform, a new buying and selling platform. It focuses on rookie cards, mostly the commodity type of rookie cards. So it's not quite as broad. It's not a COM-C, if you will, where COM-C holds all the cards under the sun. Starstock has a very specific portfolio of cards that they offer, but they've made a splash. They're all over social media. There's a lot of big fans, and they've had investment now from two pretty big names in the hobby, one athlete, one social media influencer, or his brother. So we're talking about Kevin Durant and AJ Vaynerchuk, brother to Gary Vaynerchuk. What do you think of that? How important was it that Starstock, number one, announced the capital raise, but also announced who the big contributors were and their celebrity status?
That's the way the world works now. It's in social media, you need something that's worthy of going viral and getting some buzz. And so certainly those investors got the attention of a wide stream, and it got mainstream attention. My curious thought, though, Jeremy, about Starstock is that, do you think they wish they would have launched in the year before? Because there was so much stuff going on this year, and they jumped out and they had an exciting new platform, but there was an awful lot of stuff going on. Now, rookie cards have always been strong, and they've been exceptionally strong this year. But so this infusion of capital that was earlier this month, I guess, was I think was refreshing. Was further affirmation that our category is not just hot, but it's future hot, because people are voting with their dollars for the infrastructure of our hobby. So yeah, I think it's a big positive, and I hope they do well.
And it's not just them. So we're going to have to talk about fractional ownership companies and sort of the uprising of them in our hobby. But your question about, do you think Starstock wish they launched in 2019? Yeah, I think they did. I believe their official launch was November 2019, but it takes some time to get their feet under them. But yeah, if they could have launched a year before, I think they would have benefited from the year that just was, for sure. Fractional ownership companies, we've seen these guys also sort of appear and in a way, I don't want to say take control of the hobby, but really grab the hobby's attention in a ferocious sort of manner. And we talk about celebrity involvement. I know that the fractional ownership company Collectible, whose CEO was on this show a few months ago, they've got involvement with Emmett Smith, another big name who's involved, I believe, from a marketing perspective, maybe even an investment perspective. So like you said, it's the way of the world right now, and the way of the hobby, I suppose. And that's definitely another. I like to see, Jim, I like to see athletes being involved, because their social reach is humongous. And if their fans see these guys involved in sports cards, I can see that helping our hobby go really mainstream to a point where every sports fan who has some extra money is collecting cards. Can you see us getting there?
I think it's the tip of the iceberg with these fractional situations. I mean, there's no bounds to it. If it really catches on. My curious concern here is the branding of these entities. There's new groups coming in, and they don't have to have deep pockets. They just have to have a lot of friends. They have to have, when they announce that they're putting some high-end collectible into their system, they've got to sell it out. And that seems to be not the problem. So a year from now, when we're looking at 5 or 6 of these fractional groups, what's going to recommend one over the other than the items? I don't know that you're going to be loyal to a fractional group as much as you're going to be looking to participate in the next Wagner or the next Mickey Mantle 52 Topps 9 grade. So I don't know how you brand it, but I think it's something that's here to stay. And the bigger ones are going to be successful because they can spread out their overhead and have a lot more marketing muscle. So I think it's an exciting development. In fact, I think it might be grading was an exciting development 25 years ago. Breaking, I guess, been around more than 10 years. Was a major game changer. I think fractional. I mean, we wouldn't be seeing all these $1 million cards. We wouldn't be seeing these multi-$1,000 cases if it wasn't for breaking. So I think it's a game changer.
Yeah, I do too. And you know what? The fact that we think it's a game changer, I think it's been confirmed now because, well, it's an indication that it's going to be confirmed or that that's the direction we're going in, because I just saw, I believe it's Rally just put out a piece that they're going to soon be offering a PSA 10 Wayne Gretzky Topps card on their platform. Ooh. Well, as we know, a PSA, one of the 2 just sold at Heritage Auctions earlier this month for $720,000. And now that, I believe it's the exact same card, is now being offered by Rally. So now we know who bought the card, and we know it's a fractional. And that, like you just said, we wouldn't be seeing these multi-million-dollar cards, the very expensive cases if it weren't for breaking and fractionals. Here we go. They're the ones that are bringing the Topps Gretzky to market. What do you think of that?
Okay, so you're Rally, because I mean, I think like an entrepreneur. I think like I like in the old days when I had some clout. But basically, if I'm Rally, do I put that Gretzky card out at $1 million? I bought it for $720, and I'm going to fractionalize it at $1 million. And I think people are going to say, I'm never going to spend $720,000 or more now, if that's the established price. And I think it's an impossible card. There's a couple.
Yeah, it is impossible. But now, when they take it to their market, everybody is going to be able. Well, everybody in the United States that has a social security number is going to be able to own a piece of it. Now, you're not going to be able to hold it. You're not going to be able to have it in your house, show it to your friends, but you're going to be able to know in your own mind and maybe tell your friends that, hey, I own 1/1000th or whatever it is of this card. What are your thoughts on that? Because there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of critique on the fractional ownership model. People saying that, hey, I collect cards. I don't collect a percentage of a card on my screen. I want to hold the cards in my hand. And then there's the other faction that says, well, that's how I want to invest. That's how I want to get into the sports card game, because I'm not a collector. I can't be bothered with eBay, with other buying and selling platforms. I just want to do this. It's an investment to me. And then there's people in the middle, like myself. I collect cards. I'll never stop, but I'm also willing to throw a few $100 at fractional if I was allowed to. I can't, because I'm north of the border, and just own small fractions of these cards, which I would be completely okay with. I mean, so it comes down to adoption and acceptance by the hobby as it is right now. Do you think there's going to be, it's funny, I say, do you think there's going to be resistance? It's like, but who cares? These things sell out in minutes or hours anyway. But do you think the hobby will ever, or how long do you think it'll take for the hobby to accept the fractionals as just a part of the hobby?
Okay, here's the interesting sociological experiment that we have now. If that is the same card, then Jeremy, are you interested in owning 1% of that card for $7,200? Because that's, well, I don't. Okay, but they have to price it more than that because they're in business. So if Rally has it, they're going to sell, and that would be a thin margin, I think, if they said you can buy 1/10 of 1% for $800, 1% for 8,000, 100% would then be 800,000. So then people are going to do that math and say, no, wait a minute, I could have bought it for 720, but now it's being resold immediately and packaged as an 800,000, 900,000, $1 million item. And so I think wealthy people are going to do that math and say, I just say it's like arbitrage. You go back and forth and say, what seat do I want to be in this rodeo?
Yeah.
So, but again, net, it's fabulous because it's more options, and especially on the high end stuff that people, once you get above $100,000, you get above $10,000. It's beyond 99% of the people's budget.
Yeah, no, for sure. First of all, I think a company like Rally, they buy a card like that for 720. Any fractional, you buy a card. I believe they're entitled to a lift on it before they fractionalize it, for sure. I mean, that happens. Everybody,
it'll be visible. It will be visible. People can do the math. Whereas these other cards that they put in, you don't know what they got them for. The collectible group, they've made this deal with Sports Immortals, the Platts, and we don't know what the basis is. This is the first time we can say, okay, that's the same card. This is how that works.
Yeah. Fair. And I think it's good that we have transparency in that now, where they're taking cards from private collectors and bringing them in. I mean, then all you really have are comps, and hopefully you have comps and they've based them on fair comps, taken a fair lift, and moved on from there. This Gretzky card, obviously we know where it came from. You mentioned, would I want to own 1% of this card for $7,200 or 8,000 or whatever it is? The thing is that I believe, you're always going to get a better deal when you buy in bulk. Buying in bulk in this case was buying the card all at once. If you're going to take one piece of it, you're going to pay a bit more, because that's just the way you always get a deal when you buy something in bulk. And that's what buying a card, 100% of a card would now be bulk for that particular card, if it's a card that would be a candidate of fractional ownership. So, I mean, but what do you think, Jim? You've been in the hobby a very long time. You know a ton of collectors. Do you think that collectors are going to just sort of accept it and say, hey, it's a part of the hobby now, and it's driving a lot of the values in the hobby? Are we going to be okay with it as a hobby?
Well, I mean, you see what is happening, the trends in the industry. There's another trend, and that's toward these vaults, which is the kind of the cousin of the fractional. It's owning something without possessing it. So whether you own 1% of it or 100% of it, if you can't show it to somebody because it's in a vault somewhere else, then what does it matter? But you'd have the digital representation. You can say, hey, I own this, or I own 1% of this. So I think that ship, I think, is sailed. I think we live in a virtual world where people show their collections, and their collections can include stuff that is at the bank. I mean, I have some nice cards that are in a bank vault. I know a lot of guys that have that. Well, I mean, but I can go get it, but it's a little bit of a headache to go get it, but it's not out of state. So yeah, I think the fractional, the vaults, all that stuff, people have realized that these are assets worth protecting. And as such, they're going to be treated like, some people have fine jewelry that's kept in a safe deposit box and only brought out, or in a safe and only brought out when you need it. So yeah.
And I'm leaning the same way. The world is changing. The world has changed dramatically in 2020, and the hobby, it's like, keep up. We got to keep up, and this is a part of it. It's part of the evolution of the hobby, and it isn't necessarily a new thing. There have been people investing together in buckets of sports cards for many years. This has just been formalized under a semi-regulated sort of environment, and hopefully hopefully these guys that are in charge, that are running these companies, are going to do a bang up job on it and keep the integrity at that level of the hobby. I think we need it there, because it's these cards that are making headlines.
that's the branding that matters. Is that because all these fractional companies are probably not created equal, and hopefully they're all extremely reputable and have deep enough pockets to weather cash outs or things that would happen. But that would be the first distinguishing factor, is if a fractional group was underfinanced, that wouldn't be good. So I want somebody that's got a lot of cards, deep pockets, a lot of staying power. And if the power, that's why the bigger brands can, but it could be within our industry or out in other industries. I mean, other industries are interested now in not just hockey or basketball or baseball or football, but anything. Pokemon.
Very true. Very true. Even Pokemon had a resurgence in 2020 with a lot of social media activity, Logan Paul and Logic and all these things. So yeah, it was quite the year for Pokemon. So we had some big record-breaking sales of modern cards. I know there's a Honus Wagner PSA 3, I think, just sold for in the high 3 millions, or maybe it was the low 3 millions, but north of 3.7
US 3.7, yeah.
3.7 US, yes. I mean, that's, I believe, the most ever paid for the Honus Wagner, even more than the PSA 5 miscut jumbo that sold a few years ago, I believe, at Heritage. But we saw earlier this year, I want to say it seems like so long ago now, but this was, I believe, in June or July. We had the sale of the LeBron James exquisite gold RPA out of 23, sold for $1.84 million, the most ever spent on a modern card, sold by Ken Goldin and Goldin Auctions. And then shortly thereafter, he sold the Trout Superfractor for a 3.8 something. And then the Giannis Logo Man 1 of 1 for 1.9, just north of 1.9 million. Some really, really big sales. If we're recapping 2020, Jim, two things. First is, were you surprised by these sales? And number two, how do you think that impacts the hobby?
Well, anybody that says they weren't surprised, I don't know. I mean, of course I was surprised. Anybody should be surprised. And that's why they garnered big time headlines, and not just in the hobby press. And that was headline news. World record prices, hundreds of percent greater than the previous records. So yeah, I am surprised, and I don't know that it's the rate of increase is clearly not sustainable, but where it goes from here is uncertain. Is there a plateau? I mean, again, the comparison that people want to do, they always want to do the most favorable comparison. Well, if that's worth this much, well, then I can spend this much for another card. But again, there's other alternatives besides buying cards. There's buying houses. There's buying fabulous cars. There's buying, so we're talking about real money here. And it's a different category of collector now. And they're they're excited about accumulating really rare and very desirable items.
A fellow collector, hobbyist by the name of Rod Booth, he posted on Facebook the other day that he just picked up a vintage Corvette, really beautiful vehicle. And my comment was, but think about the cards you could have had. Instead of you mentioned you could buy a house, you could buy a fancy vehicle. A lot of us are buying cards, and a lot of people, with the values that their cards have begun to reflect recently, you could sell several cards and own a vehicle. And I don't know that many people are doing that right now. I don't know that they're not doing it, but I don't know I haven't heard anybody tell me I'm selling a card to buy a vehicle. I don't know if that's happening.
What they're doing, and you mentioned Adam Gray. Adam is, I think, one of the masters of this, and a bunch of other people are doing this, is that they are buying cards, but it's not to get the Corvette. it's to trade up to get the better card, and then to trade up to get the better card. And so basically they're improving their collection, getting rare and more expensive stuff along the way. The end game, I don't think it's to buy a house. The end game is to have a better and better collection. And so I admire that. I think that's great. But at some point, the wife or the family member is going to say, you got a lot of value there. We need something else that would be more pertinent to our daily life. Could you sell something?
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's the nice thing about
big bucks.
Yeah, it's the nice thing about our collections, our sports cards, is that they carry value, and they're quite liquid relative to other sorts of investments. They're not. You do need to go through the process of sending them to a consignor or listing them on eBay yourself or sending them to an auction house. But they are quite liquid. You can convert your cards to cash in 30 days type of thing without much hassle. So. And that's what it's a nice store of value. And if you do want to convert it into your living expenses, you can do that.
It's not just that. They're so liquid, it's better than cash. You have a rare card that somebody wants, you can trade it, so favorably, even better than cash. Those days that's the way it was 40 years ago, 45 years ago, in the early days of the hobby. They didn't want your money; they wanted your cards.
Yeah, it's sort of a new frontier we're in here, where these cards are worth so much now. We saw those sales at Goldin auctions earlier this year. We've seen some big auctions at Heritage, among other auction companies, and we've seen. It's been a famous saying lately: "A rising tide floats all boats," and we've seen that really trickle down to a lot of the other cards in the hobby. While the top end Michael Jordans are selling for tons of money, 60, 70, $100,000. I'm not talking about his rookie. I'm talking about these rare 90s inserts. We're also seeing some of the more common Michael Jordan cards that were $500 a year ago are now $5,000. So we're seeing a lot of that. And I think a lot of people are feeling priced out. Cards that have been on their want list for 5 or 10 years are now just out of range for so many people, if not most people. What do you think that the impact of that is on the hobby in the long run? Is it good, bad, or kind of just like it's in the middle? It is what it is. What are your thoughts on that?
For most of my hobby life, people have lamented they wish they'd gotten in earlier. I wish I'd gotten in earlier because there have been some hiccups, but generally prices have marched up. And so you're wishing you got in a couple of years ago and you bought this stuff. So that's just the mindset of the collector. But at the risk of being a little bit negative here, the rising tide raising all boats. That's not what the global warming people say. They say the rising tide is going to flood the villages, going to overwhelm. And so you don't want the tide to rise too fast. That's my my voice of experience, or being a little bit of a sage in the industry, is things don't need to go up. They don't need to double every 3 months. They could, if they double in 3 years, that's terrific in the stock market. That's great for private equity.
Yeah, the rise has been very
unsustainable.
100% unsustainable.
Tide, sort of good. Too much of a rising tide is a flood. Is a tsunami that comes onto you. It's not like riding a surfboard. It's coming at you.
No, I agree. I think what I look forward to, and we're gonna talk about looking forward to follow up, but I am looking forward to a bit of a stabilization. I do think that we do need it in the hobby, and we need to level off a little bit. We can't have cards doubling in value every 3 months or quicker, which we've seen. Let's talk about the Wayne Gretzky PSA 10s. We had the O-Pee-Chee and the Tops that both sold earlier this month. They were sold by Heritage Auctions, and it's the first hockey card to sell for over $1 million. The O-Pee-Chee PSA 10, population of 2, sold for $1.29 million US, I believe was the number. I mean, I'm predominantly a hockey guy. I do collect all 4 sports and some of the other sports as well. But I was really pleased to see a hockey card surpass the $1 million mark. I think that was important for the hockey segment within the overall hobby. I mean, hockey is sometimes forgotten about. A lot of even Starstock doesn't. They carry baseball, football, basketball, soccer. They don't even have hockey yet. A lot of people, you hear them mention baseball, football, basketball, hockey's not mentioned. Do you think that the sale of the Gretzky PSA 10 for that kind of money is going to help put hockey on the map a little bit more across the whole hobby?
Absolutely. I mean, you and I had an extended conversation on Hobby Hotline a few weeks ago, and went back and forth. And I think we kind of push back on each other's conclusions, but we're iterating toward a better understanding of those two cards. But I think we agree those are two really tough cards. And if I went to somebody's house and they said, "Hey, let me show you some of my hockey cards," if they even had an 8, much less a 9, much less one of the two 10s, I would be blown away. Those are extremely tough and so legit as centerpieces of somebody's collection, whether in Canada or wherever. So those are fabulous cards that are condition rarities, such that compared to some of these other things that are, well, there's not a long list of. What were you saying, that the Gretzky Opachy was the 8th most expensive card
Ever sold?
That's worthy. Ever sold? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not the 8th highest auction hammer ever, because we've had multiple Honuses, multiple Mickeys, that sort of thing. But yeah, that was my understanding. The 8th highest sold. I don't think it was me that said that, but I did hear that as well.
Okay. But hockey is there. There are a lot of hockey cards collectors out there, and I'm not saying there are more than football or baseball or basketball, but they're at least as passionate.
Yeah.
So why shouldn't they have their best card being right up there?
I agree. I'm really excited by it. I think it bodes well. We've already seen other Gretzkys and other really important hockey players' values really rise quite nicely. Mario Lemieux has been a major beneficiary of that lately. So it's nice to see some respect coming to hockey, and maybe we'll see people included in when they speak of Big Four or maybe Big Five now, with the uprising of soccer also in 2020. Soccer really seems to have grabbed the hobby's attention, and I think it's a wonderful thing. It's an international sport, maybe the most popular sport in the world, and so it was only a matter of time there. Anything to add about soccer?
Well, we've mentioned liquidity. There's also kind of velocity, kind of the velocity of sales. And then the other thing I'm thinking about is kind of adjacency, is that there are so many near, kind of alternative kind of choices that in this hobby, when you go after something, that's getting expensive, there's something else that's very similar to it that may not have gone up yet. And so you can sell things quickly. You can get money out of them. And if you've got a bunch of money and you want to get something cool about a player, if you study it, you're liable to find something that hasn't gone up yet, instead of tracking for the card that's world record price already. Find the one that's not a world record price.
Yeah. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. You mentioned Adam Gray a few minutes ago. Adam Gray, a friend of mine, the Real 27 guy on Instagram, has created a new magazine for the hobby called the Basketball Card Fanatic. It's a subscription-based magazine, and I lead with that because we've seen an uprising in hobby content. This show, myself on YouTube and Facebook, Twitter, I didn't exist in this virtual world with my face a year ago. I do now, as of 2020. We've seen the uprising of hobby content, live shows, YouTube, Instagram has blown up as a major place for the hobby to congregate. How has that how do you see that impacting the hobby? Do you we didn't have card shows all year, but people are gathering. They're gathering virtually now. Do you think that this new virtual hobby world it's kind of a silly question. I'll ask it anyway to get you talking. Do you think it's sort of the way of the future now to have the virtual world, virtual shows, virtual conferences, live shows like this, celebrity guests, hobby icons like yourself joining a guy like me on here talking hobby? Adam Gray's magazine, he's got some great subscriber base. I recommend to everybody to check it out. It's called Basketball Card Fanatic. We've also seen the rise of data tools we've got a couple. I know I'm very familiar with Card Ladder. I'm a user. I've heard of Market Movers, which is from Sports Card Investor. Whereas Card Ladder is from Chris McGill from House of Jordans and Josh Johnson from Cardboard Chronicles. I believe Slab Stocks, I think they're called. They have maybe a tool coming out. I mean, we've had the uprising of virtual online data analytical tools, new virtual magazine type of things. What do you think of all this? And what do you think of it from the perspective of somebody who sort of created the price guide publication game in the hobby? I won't say create. I know there were people before you, but someone who really brought it to what Beckett became.
I built an audience. The first few years, I gave away the price information. I had price surveys. They were distributed nationally. So I kind of built my reputation for a few years, giving it away. But then, when it became a full magazine every month, I was selling it. And so I was selling information. It was curated information. Well, now, if you fast forward to 2020, moving into 2021, content, information, even curated content, curated information, for the most part, is free. Adam, the discussions I had with Adam are, but his content is so good that people are willing to pay for it. But it's got to be really good for people to want to pay for it, because there's so much free stuff. How much are you charging your viewers or listeners for this podcast? Zero. My podcast is free. So it's hard to compete against free, but the challenge is, since there's so much free stuff out there, and it is sort of curated, but it's curated by the person, that collectors that want to get in the know have to have more than one source. It's kind of like only watching one channel for your news. You need to sift through it and figure out, who you want to listen to and who's the most trustworthy. And so you're having a bunch of guests, and people get the benefit of hearing from them. And so on balance, it's a great thing. But with so much free information out there, you've got to be able to have some discernment. And some of that's from being in the past, and some of it's from being up to the minute of what's going on.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think I like how you said, you need to discern who you can trust, because there are a lot of people out there that have their YouTube channels, that have their Instagram accounts, their Facebook groups, whatever it is. And there are shady characters in our hobby. There's just no doubt about it. And there are people that may be batting above their average, if you will, when it comes to some of the knowledge that they're putting out there, that sort of thing. So I think most people will land on where they want to land on, the people that they feel are providing them good value in the hobby, whether they're paying for it or it's free, like this is, sort of thing. Okay, before we talk about what is really the biggest news, in my opinion, of the year, I do want to talk about what I've called the retail extravaganza. By that, what I mean by that is that there's this big issue, and I'm not a guy who buys sports cards at retail, but I talk to a lot of people that do, and there's a whole problem, it seems like, within the distribution channels of our hobby, in terms of people just can't get the product. I know in Canada, you can't, the local card shops up here are very, they're sad, I would say, that they can't get Panini basketball. They got people coming in asking for it. They just can't get it, or they can get a very limited allocation of it. And then at the retail level, at the big box stores in the US, we hear people jumping on each other, camping out early, waiting for the stalkers to come stock the shelves. Is this, and we talked about it this morning on Hobby Hotline, and I'm not sure, is it good for the hobby that there's such a rush for these products? Is it bad that there's not enough product? Is it good that there's not enough product? Because if there is, we'd see higher print runs. Or is it bad that people are buying it, hoarding it at the store and flipping it on eBay for 8 times what they're paying for it? I mean, you can go back and forth. Is it good? Is it bad? Do you have any thoughts on the distribution channels or the flaws within the distribution channels in 2020?
They're flaws. I mean, basically what's going to happen is there are going to be some changes going forward. They're going to increase the price, or they're going to tighten up some of the rules for some of these mass retailers. But what's happening now, there's an ebb and flow. And so they've got to figure out new packaging, or like I say, increasing the price doesn't seem to be the answer. And you can't really control, hey, you can't mark this up above a certain amount. It's, we live in a free world, but they're going to change. They're going to change it. So they're going to raise the price. Probably, I think they have to raise the price, because my problem is twofold. Because I don't have a problem with the shelves being empty if they're being bought by collectors, but I don't like it if they don't ever make it to the shelves. Under the table deals. I don't like that, and I don't like it when people that don't know anything about the hobby can clean something out and triple their money. To me, that's been happening. So the card companies are going to have to raise their prices, or change their packaging in some way. And it's probably going to price out some people that were casual buyers. So again, it's the better problem to have than what we had 30 years ago, where there were mountains and stacks of unopened stuff that was stale. There's nothing. If something's stale on the retail shelves now, it's a dog.
It's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. And I got to just mention to all the viewers right now, everybody, I do apologize. I have not been keeping up with the comments since I welcomed everybody earlier on in the episode. We are on limited time with the good doctor this evening. So we got about another 12, 13 minutes with him. So I do want to get to, again, what I believe is the biggest news of the year. But in the meantime, I just want to mention, everybody, thanks for joining. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, please do. Dr. Beckett will be joining me back here 2 weeks today for part 2 of this discussion. So be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like and all those wonderful things that us guys with shows on YouTube like to ask you to do. I greatly appreciate it, especially seeing the subscription level build up. So please subscribe if you don't mind. Thank you very much. Okay. Jim, the biggest news in the hobby this year, in my opinion, I was going to make a joke, but I can't think of one, relates to grading. And the fact that, as you said earlier, grading changed the hobby in the late 90s, 2000s, and then breaking changed again in 2010. Fractional seems to break it this year. It's like every 10 years, something breaks into the hobby and changes it. Grading has been, the biggest brand out there for a while, I believe, has been PSA. If you just look at market share, and I know you have your name is on the biggest other competitor to that, so I say that somewhat a little nervously, but PSA seems to be the big one in the industry right now, and they are going private. It seems they're going private in the new year with by an investor group led by private collector Nat Turner, who seems to me to be the right guy for the job. What do you think this means? Like 2020, we're going to remember Project 2020. We're going to remember COVID. I think we're going to remember these big record-breaking sales at Heritage and Goldin. And I think we're going to remember that PSA went private headed up by Nat Turner. What do you think the legacy of this transaction is going to be? And do you think it helps the grading industry moving forward?
I'm going to try to answer this in a fresh way, Jeremy, because we talked about this last month on the Hobby Hotline a little bit. But basically, it's totally positive to me that Nat Turner is leading a group to buy the company. The privatization is another aspect. And the only fresh thought I had about that is that I think it's really good for this industry to have a public company that can be a bellwether for how well the industry is doing. So I do think I'm going to miss that Wall Street is not going to be able to track that PSA was really doing great this year. They're going to be private. I mean, if this sale goes through. And so I miss that because it was an indication of the robust health of our industry. But when you want to get headlines in the Wall Street Journal, $700 million is a bigger headline than 3.9 million or any of these other prices for individual cards. I mean, it's investors betting on the infrastructure of our industry, and that's I think it's terrific. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Nat and and Joe Orlando still, what's going to happen with the new energy and some innovation within PSA. And again, your rising tide raising all boats. There's going to be increased interest in grading. I think BGS hopefully is going to pick up some of that. I'm not financially I have no financial interest in that, anymore. But again, if the rising tide rises, I think BGS will be ready to get more business as the category keeps getting bigger.
The hobby has had issues with grading and grading companies for quite some time now. With the change of leadership, the upcoming change of leadership at PSA, and I've heard a lot of people say, I've heard this is going to happen, that's going to happen. I mean, you can't have heard anything that's going to happen. These guys haven't taken over yet. So whatever might happen, it's all hearsay at this point. I would have to think. I'm not in there also hearing what is or isn't being said, so I could be wrong. But with the hobby having issues with grading and grading companies for so long, what change do you want to see happen that would instill confidence in the grader hobby, in the grading companies again, taking it back to the beginning of time in grading, when the trust just seemed to be there by default because these guys were, and you were there at the time, you created Beckett Grading Services at the time. What do you want to see?
Well, we tried to do something that was slightly different. We weren't trying to be a copycat service. We wanted to innovate and do some things that, not that PSA was doing anything wrong. We just thought we're going to come at it a little bit different. We had a different kind of a holder. We had the inner sleeve. We had the report card. We had a different kind of pricing and bulk pricing model. So we were doing some things different. And so many of the people said, we like your model. And many of the people said, no, we still like PSA. And then SGC had their fans as well. Here's what I'd like to see going forward that I think has a chance is the grading companies all of them have a tough job. But if they were to work together more, again, not collusion and not anything like that, but Nat Turner is a former big customer of BGS. And so he's very aware of what happens there. If there was a sharing of the information on some of the bad cards, bad actors, not necessarily best practices, almost like sharing worst practices, that we'd help clean up the industry. Again, that's good for everybody. So if I were there, and again, you can't be the judge and the jury and the executioner, or you can get a lawsuit. But if somebody submits bad cards, I was actually talking to the BGS grading guys, and they said they got a questionable thing that I might know something about. And I said, well, is this person a regular submitter? I said, no, they've never submitted to us. I said, well, what do you think? I mean, if this is a rare card has questionable authenticity, why are they sending it? And it's old and it's weathered. I said, I don't even need to look at it. I mean, I have a negative thought right now if it's not one of your bulk submitters that you built up some trust with. So if that was communicated to PSA and SGC and even CSG, that the industry work together, because it damages all of them. If BGS has a problem, it reflects poorly on PSA and vice versa. So I'd like to, and I think there's a chance with Nat Turner. Again, I call it co-opetition. There's a book written about it. You compete where you have to compete, but you cooperate where you can cooperate. And again, that's a rising tide raising all boats that would be great for our industry. We need to weed out some of the bad actors.
Man, I love it. I love it because you just gave us something, a real great nugget there. To summarize, knowledge sharing amongst the big grading companies, the PSA, the Beckett Grading Services, SGC, CSG, get these guys talking to each other, sharing knowledge where they can for the benefit of the hobby. I think that would instill a lot of trust in a lot of the hobby and would rise the tide, rise all those ships I think that's man, that right there. That's the nugget for me for this whole episode right now. So,
but Jeremy, it's probably a crawl before you walk, before you run. I'd like to see steps in that direction. I mean, I don't have any clout anymore. I'm this old guy that's saying, here's what I'd love to see. But if some of the people took it to heart, I think it'd be net positive for our industry, that we'd have less bad stuff out there. Same would go for Steve Grad and Jimmy Spence and all the different and PSA DNA, that the autograph authenticators would work together. Again, not work together is too strong of a word, but that there'd be a collegial, if there's just a little bit of cooperation.
Yeah, and I agree. Let's walk before you run, but let's evolve and get to that point eventually. At least work towards it. Like I don't think we're going to see that co-opetition happening right away. But yeah, I think that's something that we can definitely strive for, and make our voices heard as a hobby. That's what we'd like to see. And if like you said, it would benefit everybody. I have to think it would benefit everybody. It's unregulated. This hobby's unregulated, so we need the power players to do their best to protect the future of our hobby, I believe. Okay. Listen, I mean, we're just about at the hour mark. So before I let you go, I want to show you something here. I'm going to share my screen briefly. This is one of my most recent card pickups, Jim. Here it comes. So this is
you're the one that bought that.
Why did I buy it from you? I just picked this up yesterday or the day before on ComC. It's a 1992 Topps Stadium of Stars, Jim Beckett III, BGS.
I certainly was the original owner. It's kind of my Topps rookie card.
Is this this particular copy? It's a true gem.
Yes. I mean, come on. It was made in '92. There's a whole sheet of a bunch of guys in it. Yeah. So, in fact, I have an episode coming out on that with a guy that's trying to get the set, and a bunch of my teammates. Rich Klein has one. So yeah, each guy that was in the set, Topps made a big sheet, cut them up, and each guy got 500 cards. And so, I've released some of them, and so some people have put them out on ComC, and I guess some people have gotten them graded, and I've autographed a few, and it's just kind of crazy. When I autograph them, I've got to send them in to Steve Grad to let him authenticate me. I say, Steve, it's me.
It's good. Trust me, Steve.
That'll be $10.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw this. I thought, I gotta have it. It's right up my alley as far as hobby history and all that goes. So yeah, very cool. Very cool. I wanted to share that with you and with everybody else out there.
So what's my market cap? What's my market cap?
Market cap, I'll tell you. This card wasn't cheap or free, that's for sure. But
I want to see that on Card Ladder, that it had the greatest price jump from. Chris, if you're listening, put me on Card Ladder I should have jumped up a little bit.
Yeah,
you did the cards that you're covering.
I'll upvote this one on their submissions page for sure. But I'll tell you, I paid $80 for it, $80. And I think it's a pretty low pop, so that's pretty cool.
Oh yeah,
it's your Topps rookie, so it's your rookie card. I thought, hey, I need that in my collection, and I will be taking delivery of that card eventually. So I wanted to show that to you tonight
All right.
Yeah. So okay, well, listen, Jim, thank you so much for joining me this evening and joining us. We've had a very strong viewership. I want to thank everybody who's joined the viewing. We are going to listen. There's a ton of comments that have come through. So I'm going to take about 10 more minutes and stay on by myself here. We're going to let Dr. Beckett go. And I'm going to run through some of these comments with you guys. And then in half an hour from now, I'll come back for the after hours show on the same YouTube channel. My guest is Charles Hinde, and we are going to be talking about some card values before and after some big sales, before and after the PSA 10 Wayne Gretzky sales. So Again, Dr. Beckett, pleasure to have you, and we will chat soon.
Jeremy, if they've got questions for me, if you jot them down, and next time I'm on, I'm happy to address them. If people want something from me or you and me to discuss a certain topic. So I've enjoyed it. Keep up the great work. It's fun, and you're more than just hockey, Jeremy. Yeah, so it's fun. It's fun.
Well, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. And yeah, I will, I'll put it out there to the hobby and see what they want to hear us talk about 2 weeks from now. Yes. I do have some bullet points for us to discuss in terms of what's to come in 2021. We touched a couple things tonight, but not everything. We will do that again 2 weeks today, January the 9th, same time, same place, everybody. Come back and see us then. Jim, I'll let you let yourself out whenever you're ready.
I sure appreciate it, Jeremy. I'll see you in 2 weeks, and have a good new year.
Same to you, sir. Thank you so much.
You bet.
All right. So everybody, thank you. That was awesome. What a guy. What insights. I'm going to keep going, though, because there's tons of comments here, and I just want to sort of scan them quickly. We'll see what we've got. And I haven't looked at any it's been about 50 minutes. So I do apologize, but bit of an exception for tonight. And again, in about half an hour, I'll be coming back on the after hours show. So we had Orvie joining us. Great way to go. Jay, good to see you. Ziggy back in the house, Facebook user. I think I already saw some of these. Card Shop Dad. Hey guys, I'm going to go to the end of the comments and work backwards. That might be smarter. Oh, they're all thank you, Dr. Beckett. What did he get? He has his doctorate in statistics, and he is a professor as well. Rich says, great segment. You are welcome, Rich. A lot of thank yous for Dr. Beckett. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Richard Klein says, I know who owns the sheet of that set, being the Dr. Beckett card. Oz Cardad, will you be offering fractional shares in the Dr. Beckett rookie card, Jeremy? No, I'm gonna bulk purchase that and keep it all for myself, Oz Cardad. But hey, maybe one day, we will see. Texas Card Dude, glad you enjoyed it. Thank you for joining. BG says, Michael Ham. Oh, sorry, that's a response to somebody else. What did he say? Sports card. I think the price companies will sell for will shock. That'll be very interesting. I am going backwards. This doesn't make much sense. Michael Ham said, if you're a card company and you don't own rights to a sport, you sell a less desirable product. I'm hoping for more competition in the hobby. We need it. Well, that's everyone's entitled to their opinion on the licensing issue. We do have Brian Gray in the room, who does make cards, hockey cards, beautiful hockey cards, unlicensed, and works around it the best that they can. And they put out a high quality product that has a lot of fans, a lot of very loyal collectors, as far as I've seen around. Going backwards is a little bit confusing for me here in the comments, but we'll just keep on going. Brett C, with the bad experience I had with BGS, I do not plan on sending any other cards to BGS. Yeah, but people changing companies, leadership changes, and strategies change. So perhaps wait and see how things fall out over the next few months here. Rich Klein from Beckett. It was Dr. Jim, me, Grant, Sandground, and Tom. That's who started Beckett Grading Services. Okay, guys, listen. This is a little complex going backwards in terms of comments, but I do thank everybody for all your comments during the show. It was very nice to have Dr. Beckett join me. So we're going to sign off for now. Be back here in about 25 minutes, and we're going to go with the after hours show. Should be nice, relaxing episode. Wow, I'm just scrolling through comments, and there's hundreds of them, guys. So I apologize. I'd love to have been able to integrate them into the show, but I just wasn't. So I'm going to see if there's a couple here that I can still talk to before I sign off. Don't give Jeremy ideas to charge us for the show. No charging coming, Terry. No charging coming. How do you decide to grade a card with BGS or PSA, anyone? Really, it's a brand decision is what it comes down to. But check out the cards. You can see many of them online. Ryan says, do you think the price premiums of vintage OPG over tops is sustainable? I certainly do believe it is. I certainly do believe that they are sustainable. They've been that way for really since the beginning of time. I don't know why that would change. Terry says, I think PSA is pricing themselves out. I would rather put 50 towards another card than getting one graded. Yeah, you're in the minority, Terry. I think when it comes to a lot of cards, though, they're not pricing themselves out. I do not agree with that. I think they are. I think they still have a ton of business, and I think that we're going to see the pricing change. And I'm not in one direction or the other, but I think it will be. They will optimize the pricing. They will find that sweet spot for the hobby and for themselves. I believe they will. I think the new leadership is going to be smart enough to make sure that happens. I hope they do, one way or another. Product allocation starts with the manufacturer pricing being so high for hobby boxes. Also, we need multiple authentication to stop the bots. Yeah, the bots are a whole other thing that I've been hearing about. Not too familiar as someone who doesn't buy products online very often, if at all. All right, guys, good enough. So listen, that's it for now. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I will be back, as I've said 5 times already, I will be back in just over 20 minutes with Richard for After Hours. Please join us then. This was fun. Thanks, everybody, for joining. It's been an awesome 2020. Appreciate everybody watching. Appreciate your subscribership. Appreciate your engagement during the show. Join the Facebook group under the same name, Sports Cards Live. Over 600 members there. Come check that out. Follow me on Instagram. I'll put that up right there. Also follow the Big Three. The Big Three Hockey on Instagram. These guys showcase awesome cards on the regular. Here's my Instagram, Twitter, and the Facebook group information. If you care to follow me on socials, that's where you can find that. And of course, coming up a week today, Josh Johnson of Card Ladder, as we discussed with Dr. Beckett, as well as Cardboard Chronicles, another great YouTube channel, will be joining me, followed by Dr. Beckett again 2 weeks today. But in the meantime, that's it, guys. I'm out. Thank you for 2020. It was awesome. Really appreciate everyone watching and the encouragement along the way. Really, the encouragement, the support has meant a lot to me, and it's really helped to bring better guests and hopefully provide great content. So I appreciate y'all. We'll see you back here in 20 minutes. Good night.